Welcome to the Altered Call, where the cross alters everything.
Long into your preaching was when Dad came to Motorola.
That was probably about, let's see. See, Church Street had been going for about 3 or 4 years when Robert came, or 3 years at least.
I came to work at Motorola in '88.
So
Really?
I'd probably been preaching about 6 or 7 years.
Did you get like a feeling about him when you first saw him? Or
Yeah, I'm
was
sure
it-
he had a few feelings about it.
Don't go there.
You don't want to know
It was
what I
probably
felt.
bad. Yeah.
Yes, yes, we are recording. Yes.
You don't want to know what I felt. It was so odd because the way it all worked, because I was always, it wasn't that I had a quiet faith, but I just didn't jump up and, hey, I'm a preacher, and I'm,
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't shove it down people's throat.
I never did that, and especially I just felt like I work for a living and I preach because I'm called, and I'd always wait for God to open the door. If He wanted me to talk about that at work, He would open the door, and He always did.
Yeah.
And I had some of the boys would be out, drinking and partying all weekend long. And of course, when you get out and get to drinking, next thing you know, you're talking about Bible scriptures, and stuff.
Every time.
Every time. Every time.
And they would come in Monday morning, and here they go, start asking me about, what's this mean? What's that mean? So I would, here's my chance, But I didn't tell people, oh, I'm a preacher, And so Robert had no idea. He said later, I could tell you didn't curse, and you didn't do a lot of the stuff that other guys was doing. So I knew something was a little different about you. But anyway, he was saying some stuff, and it was kind of a little bit off color, And my brother said, "Hey, you do know Danny's a preacher, right?" He goes, "No, I didn't know that." So after that, then every now and then we would get a chance to talk, and it was different, But the thing, in fact, when you did come and talk to me, Robert, you know what it was? It was lunch. The secretaries had gone to lunch, and I had to answer the phones while they were at lunch. We only had one secretary at that time, so when they would go to lunch, I had to man the phones. So I was up front, answering the phones, and Robert come walking up there. He just finished his lunch and walked up there. That's when he told me, he said, I know what I need to do. I need to stop this, stop that, stop this, stop that. And I said, Robert, that's admirable that you want to do that. I mean, that's awesome that you want to do that. But those things is what he wants to do for you.
Yeah.
And he, I don't think he'd ever thought about it like that. I know I never had before. So, but that's how, but old James Stewart, boy, there's a good example of a Christian man that was around people that wasn't always doing Christian things, but he was always a Christian in front of them.
Yeah.
And they were all good friends, so they did things together and played cards and whatever, and James was just a light. And that man, it was such an awesome thing because a guy came to me and says, "Man, James Stewart is not happy where he's at." And at his church, and he would, well, you need to go invite him. I said, I can't do it. And he said, why? I said, because he's got a church. And he said, well, he's not happy. I said, I hate that. I said, but listen, I made these guys promise me we would not do that. If somebody had a church home, we're not going to invite them to our church. And he said, even if they're not happy? I said, even if they're not happy, that's between them and the Lord. I said, I'm not doing that. And he got mad at me. He got really upset with me. He said, man, I didn't told you he's not happy. I said, listen, I'm not doing it. So anyway, I didn't know if he'd even, whatever. But sure enough, one Sunday I looked up, and there come the guy that had asked me to ask James, and here come James walking in.
Really?
And he sat back there. I'll never forget it. Sat back there about 2 rows from the back on the end. And the guy that had been inviting him, he wasn't really a member of our church. He just came there. And he stood up and he said, "Hey, James, come up here." And he brought him up to the second row.
Oh.
And you could see James's face was blood red, boy. I mean,
Always.
So he was always just easy to get.
Always.
Red face.
But he sat there, and guess what? That made him a part of the service.
Yeah.
And he's been here ever since.
He was a major witness in my life.
Oh, listen.
So y'all hung out before
That's
Church Street?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a whole lot of
Yes, sir.
Really?
Yeah, golly.
Oh, there was a whole crew of those guys, and they all wound up getting in church at Church Street. Every one of them.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. It's just
Did not know
that's
that.
how God built this church.
On love.
Yes,
That's why I think it's just one of the most important things that Jesus ever said was, like, what his most important commandment was, is love others as I have loved
That's
you.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And that changes that commandment, boy. It's not a new commandment, but what he added to it made it new.
Yeah.
As I have loved you.
Yeah.
Whoa, 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 whoa. That ain't just loving people. That's loving them like he loves them.
Yep.
Whoa. That makes it a little harder.
Well, being approachable, like Danny was talking about when I met him, I was 19 years old maybe.
Yeah.
You was 19.
He's a youngin'.
Yeah.
And what was even more awesome about that was
He was approachable.
Jeannie Sisk is the one that told him about the ad in the paper to come to Motorola to see about a job.
Oh, wow.
And they would wind up in the church.
Yeah.
And then out in my life, though, me and my friends, we ended up in a circle that James ended up in.
Yeah.
And, I thought I'd never met anybody. I mean,
incredible.
a good
That's
guy.
amazing.
It's incredible.
And God had me surrounded. I mean, he
Yeah.
had a plan and was pushing me, but I had never met such real people in my life.
But see,
awesome.
but in building a church, see, when he builds the building, when he builds it,
He sure will stand.
he puts the people there that he knows he can use for what your calling is.
Yep.
Yeah.
So many of them are kind of family oriented, and that's fine, But there's not a group or a family or a particular clique that's in charge here. Everybody in here is just
Working
as
in their own
important and
ways.
just as viable to what
Yeah.
God's doing here. And I mean, and I tell you a classic example of that is Matthew. I mean, me and Carmen she was having a test run at the doctor's office. And the nurse said, "Yeah, Matthew's told me about your church." I mean,
Yeah.
it's just,
I can't wait to get him on here.
it's just
it's gonna be
crazy
fun.
how that works. And if you look, and here's what's even crazier still. If you look, that goes all the way back to us beginning and me telling those guys, "No, we ain't passing out handbills. We're just going to have church and tell what good things God's doing."
Yep.
And that's still how he's building this church.
Yep.
Yeah. Nothing's changed.
Because people are wanting to see what Jesus is doing here.
Yeah, that's what our last episode was about. Go and tell.
Go and
Yep.
tell.
He will draw them in. If there's something that will draw them here, they'll come. And it's not like that's Brother Shay, he said, what possesses a preacher to build a 500-seat church in the middle of a cornfield in a little town, Bremen? And I said, the only thing I can tell you is God told me to do it, brother. That's all I can tell you. And it's like, is that one of them build it and they will come? I said, that's pretty much the deal.
That's the story, yeah.
It's pretty much the deal.
Yeah.
And this property was so ordained by God for us to be here. I mean, it was unbelievable.
From the very beginning.
From the very beginning. I
Yeah,
mean,
tell that.
I mean, it's when I was in that little office at Church Street and in that little white building, and I said, and I remember, Lord, a lot of our young people have grown up and gone to college, and some of them moved off and took jobs, and so we don't have as many kids. And I said, Lord, send us some more kids. I mean, we've lost some of our kids, and just like you talking to me, He said, you don't have enough room for what I'm getting ready to do here. And I'm going, well, I wasn't praying about room. I wasn't even thinking about room. And it just like, whoa. And then a few weeks later, it was like, you need to find 10 acres of ground. And I'm going, why do I need 10 acres of ground? It makes no sense. And I didn't even tell Karma. I mean, I literally would drive around Bremen because I knew it had to be here. And I would drive around Bremen, and everywhere I thought, oh, this might be for sale, I'd get out and step on that piece of ground and, nope, this ain't it. And I never told a living soul. And I was in Owensboro driving around the Walmart parking lot looking for a parking spot. And I seen this couple staring at me, looking at me, and I'm thinking, who are those people? And come to find out, she was checking out my little GMC I had, and she, when I did park, they came over and it was Ann and Dewey Dwyer.
Really?
And I'm going, wow, how crazy is this? And I said, I can't believe I'm seeing you guys over here and whatever. And I said, well, I seen your truck, and I told Dewey, I said, I really like that Jimmy. And anyway, they walked up to me and saw it was me. And Dewey, out of nowhere, goes, I heard you was looking for some property for a church. I'm going, I didn't tell anybody that. And I'm saying, yeah. And he said, well, I'll sell you some property there by the railroad track off the lake down there if you're interested. He said, how much you need? I said, well, I'm supposed to buy 10 acres. He goes, well, I was thinking more like 5. And I said, well, that's just what he said, well, just, let me know. I said, okay. Well, I had found out that this property here was going to be sold at an auction at the courthouse auction, and so I'd promised Troy Gibson that I wouldn't tell anybody because they were the ones looking at buying it. So I had to keep it to myself because he had approached me and said, "I heard you was looking for some property."
Oh, so he didn't know either?
No,
Wow.
none of these people knew anything.
Wow.
And so he had said something about it. And I said, "Well, Troy, I need 10 acres. He said, "Well, I don't think they're going to want to sell that much off of here." I said, "Well, that's what I'm supposed to buy." And he goes, "Well," I said, "Well, can you at least take me to where it is?" I said, "If I won't tell a living soul where it is." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I'll do that." So he came and picked me up. I lived on the corner up there and where your mom lives. And he come and picks me up in a little Toyota truck he had. And we get in a truck and we drive down the road a half mile and we pull up in this driveway here. And it's a old farmhouse. It's all growed up, and there's a little farmhouse here and barns and chicken coops and all of that. And I get out of that truck and I put my feet on the ground, and so help me, Holy Ghost bumps come up all over my arms.
Yep.
I knew this was the property.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we left, and my phone rings the next day, and it's Dewey Dwyer. And he says, "Hey, I told you about this property down at the lake." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I'll tell you a piece that's getting ready to go for sale. Anna's home place there." And I said, "Really?" Because I had to act surprised. And he said, "Yeah, it's going to be sold at the courthouse if you might want to check in on that." I said, "Well, I appreciate that." So I called Troy up and said, "Hey, brother, I done found out another way about this property." And I told him what happened. He goes, "Then you're free to talk to your church or whatever you want to do." So I go to the men, the deacons, and I say, "Hey, look, there's some property for sale, going to go for sale." And I said, "I want y'all to go out here with me, and I want you to check it out." So Sunday morning after church, it was dead cold, man. It was winter time. And we drove out here and pulled up in that little driveway out here, and all those guys got out. And I looked over at James Stewart, and he's going, felt the same thing. Yep. Felt the same thing. Long story short, we wound up going up there and bidding on this property. Glenn Dunn did the bidding for me, and we both went up there together. And he did, and we got the property, and we left after the master commissioner signed the deed, and we paid him, and we did all that. Me and Glenn drove straight down here, of course, pulled right up in the driveway, and when I got up in the driveway, there sat Dewey's old truck.
Yeah.
And Hannah was standing in front of her old home place, house, just crying like a baby. Oh, it broke my heart because I'd known that woman my whole life. I'd worked at that lake for years down there, and her and Dewey were friends, and it just tore me up that we had bought her home place, and it broke my heart. And I got out and went straight to her, and I just grabbed her and hugged her and said, "Anna, I'm so sorry." And she said, "Danny Greene, that is not why I'm crying." I said, "Why are you crying?" She said, "When I was a little girl, my daddy would lead me around this property, and he said, 'Honey, one day there'll be a church here.'"
Wow. That's awesome.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And listen, even better, and another one to that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were here. We had a funeral here, and the visitation night there was a guy that pulled up in the parking lot and came in that was kin to the folks the family that was there, and he looked around a few minutes and he said, "Hey, this property. Let me tell you something." He said, "Years and years ago," he said, "me and my mama was coming down this Bethlehem Church Road, and my car broke down right here at the end of the road. Man, it was a good car, never had any trouble at all. That thing quit right here at the end of this road. With no cell phones back then, so I walked all the way down to Jones's grocery store, which is down there by the railroad track on Highway 81,
Yeah.
to get to a phone to call for help." He said, "When I got back to the car, my mama was sitting over in the passenger seat with her hands up in the air, shouting and praising God. And she said, 'Honey, the Holy Ghost is all over this place.' She said, 'There's fixing to be a church on that property over
That
there.'"
is awesome. I didn't know that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
one of
awesome.
my favorite stories.
That's true. So, yeah.
Wow.
We're on holy ground.
Yep. And that's why when people was fretting about, "Oh, why did that tornado hit this church?" I can't tell you that for sure, but God sure knew it was supposed to be here.
Yep.
And he knew exactly where it was. He told us right where to put it. So,
I love it though. I always think about Israel when they were in Egypt, and the word said that after Joseph had died, that the Pharaoh had died.
Yeah.
He was afraid of the Hebrews,
Yeah.
yeah.
and he thought, man, they may rise up against us or join another
Yeah.
army against us, and so they set taskmasters over them to afflict them.
Right.
But he said the more they were afflicted,
Yeah.
the more they multiplied, the more they grew.
That's right.
And these, that old saying is, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger."
Yeah.
But man, God has taken,
Yeah.
things that you feel like at that moment, kind of like you did that night when it's
Yeah.
church is tore to pieces and
Yeah.
the water's pouring in, and
Yeah.
your house is blowed through the woods, and
Yeah.
I mean, just
Yeah.
and this community just devastated, and families in our church.
Yeah.
But God is taken and made stronger,
Oh man.
and it's His strength, and He
Yeah.
promised in His weakness,
That's it.
our weakness,
That's
in
it.
our weakness, His strength will be made perfect,
Yeah.
and He
Yeah.
has done it every time.
Every
Yeah.
time.
The more frail you feel, the stronger
Amen.
he is. And so,
Amen.
but yeah, and the same way with the gospel. I mean, when those disciples started preaching the gospel, the apostles started preaching the gospel, what they do, they scattered them. They thought, we'll stop this mess. We'll just separate them all. But guess what? That made the
Backfired.
gospel being preached in every
Everywhere.
region.
Yeah.
So it just caused the gospel to spread. So what they thought would put an end to it actually set it on fire.
Oh my goodness, I
So
love it.
that's how it is. What the devil meant for evil, God meant for good. And so you can't look at anybody's situation and go, my goodness, what did they do wrong, or what did this happen? Now, God's up to something, man.
Yep.
Let God do His perfect work.
What was the moment for you when you kind of got your legs back under your feet? Do you remember that moment? Like after the tornado, like when you started to kind of feel like yourself again, I guess you could say? Probably wasn't in the tent.
Yeah, really.
Was it in the tent?
It started in the tent. That's when I started. I mean, we had a couple services, with the Ham Beach Church, and that was good. But when we were back on this property,
Yeah.
that's when I
Yeah.
when I started to feel like, okay, we're gonna.
We're gonna make it.
And honestly, and by that time, He started sending people that, I mean, there was a lot of people that came in and had big promises and
Right.
this stuff, and I'm going to do this. But when the people that God wanted to showed up to help, and man, it was like it was the no strings attached. We are going to help.
Yep.
Things and boy, it was that's what, and I mean it was almost on a daily basis. Somebody was coming up here, shaking my hand and going, here's for the church. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, it was the goodness of people. I'm telling you, I had kind of began to lose a little faith in people because it was just like, man, people's minds are just continually on evil. It's
Yeah.
just crazy. But that made me say, you know what? Even in the midst of all the craziness, there's still some good people in this
Yeah.
world,
A lot of them.
and there's a lot more than what you think. And it's kind of like, Elijah said, only I remain, God
Yeah.
said, oh no, I've got some in the cave all reserved and ready to go. It's just, you ain't by yourself, but you feel like that when you're in that place, boy, I had worked my whole life, and since I was 16 years old, full-time job, and Carmel had worked, and we had gotten to a fairly decent place in our lives where we're okay here, things are in pretty good shape, and then all of a sudden, that's all gone.
Yeah.
And like I don't have enough insurance to get a house. I don't have enough money to do any of this stuff, and it's just like whoa. And so, but now, I mean, it's like, well, God built it back, and He did it Himself, and so. But so we look out and go, to God be the glory. I mean,
Amen.
Yeah.
when I walk on my back porch, I think, God, you built this for me. You sent people to do this for me. It's amazing, amazing.
It was amazing to watch too.
Yeah.
For us, I know Kenna's taking care of the switcher this morning, but we can.
Hi, Kenna.
Yeah, hey Kenna.
She's behind the scenes.
Yeah, she's behind the scenes. But it was awesome to watch because when it first happened, I mean, it was awful watching you and Nana. I'll be honest. I'm sure everybody kind of felt that way in the church, especially. But it was almost like you just gone. You wasn't really there. Nana and you, of course.
Dusty said at one point, the day after, he was up here, and he said, I was standing back on the back corner of the church, and my phone was just ringing constantly.
It was awful.
And I was just answering the phone, and Dusty said, I looked back there, Dad, and you were just going in circles
Yep.
in the same spot. And I had no idea I was doing that.
Yeah.
I was just sitting there spinning like a top. And people was coming up to me, and I don't remember them coming up to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
People told me, oh, hey, so-and-so, I didn't even see them.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
wild.
It was, it's unbelievable. It's impossible to explain.
Yeah.
How but I mean, all of a sudden you're sitting in a church, and people had started to get here, see it in them. Keith Wilkins come first, and
Right.
and then Sid and them came, Joe and them came, and Joe literally went home. Joe Eubanks went home and got his dad's old boots and some dry socks for me.
Yeah.
And I remember peeling those wet socks off and trying to get dry socks on my feet, and just it's just hard to even wrap your
Explain.
mind around it. Yeah, it's crazy. So to go from that to where we are now,
Oh my gosh,
it's just
It's amazing.
it's awesome.
But don't
having
quit.
having an attitude of thankfulness is not hard to come by.
No.
If you've been through anything at all, that's why it's kind of tough for me when I see people complaining about stuff that's like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there are people really going through things.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And that happened for us pretty quickly too, because honestly, I've told this and it's true. As a pastor, one of the first things I had to do was a graveside service for that little baby.
Oh yeah.
And try to find clothes and try to get down there to help that family. And they wasn't sure that they didn't want to bother me,
Yeah.
because of all that had gone on, And I thought, man, I'd have crawled on my hands and knees to get down there to help y'all with this. I mean, it's just so you put things in perspective pretty quick. Stuff is stuff, but life is a whole other deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It made you realize how thankful you was for what you had.
Yeah, buddy. And when you watch and see, well, like Andrew and Charity, and to hear them glorify God through all of that, and let you know that, hey, it was the most big a loss as anybody could ever have, but yet giving God the glory that He was.
Yeah.
And I went in at the funeral home, and I they didn't have an open thing, but I walked in there. And I saw the little boy lying there, and the hurt and the pain, and just this looked perfect. He looked perfect, and just to know that he's with God comforted me, and I know it does them. And Charity got that word. He's with God. He's with me. So when you know that, so it changes everything about us if we allow it to.
Yeah. And that's just true about
Well,
him turning.
didn't we all just how much tighter
Yeah, that's what
We
I'm saying.
got-
That's what I'm saying.
we got?
Yeah.
Together.
The ones that wasn't affected by it were still affected by it.
Yeah.
Well, just like that church that helped. Jelaine met that guy. He asked the question, were you affected by the tornado? Her first answer was no. But then she said, no, wait a minute. Yes, I was too. Our church building was destroyed. Our pastor lost his home and everything he had.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was affected by it.
Yeah.
So we all.
Yeah, we all carried that burden together.
But aren't we all affected if somebody's sick in your family or somebody's...
Yeah.
When somebody in our church family is hurting, we hurt too.
Oh my gosh.
So it's if you really love each other, that's how it is.
That's what's so awesome about our church. I know I brag on it a lot. I'm biased a little bit because of you and stuff. But,
Well, I hope everybody feels that way
but
about their church.
I think
Yeah.
everybody feels
I
that
hope
way
so.
about their church,
I
or
hope so.
should.
I hope so.
And but that's what's so awesome about our church is like we are quite larger church for our community, and we have a small
Small church.
Church-
feeling.
small church
Yeah.
mindset.
Said-
Like,
they said we couldn't do that. They said, well,
Yeah, that's what I'm going back
You get to
to.
be a big church, you'll be different. Well, no, we're not any different at all. We're
No.
not.
No.
There's a lot more people, and we don't have. It's not as easy to get around.
I tell you what was amazing to see though is that that tent was packed every morning through snow,
It
through
didn't make
whatever
any
it was.
it
difference.
would be
Hot.
hot as all get out.
It was
Lord,
packed.
yeah.
It was packed.
And we had, and my God,
It
God
was
showed
awesome.
out there, didn't He?
Some
Yeah.
of
Oh, man.
some of those pictures that was taken from the back of the tent toward the pulpit area.
Oh man,
They just see heads everywhere, and everybody just sitting like this.
it was uncomfortable.
Shoulder to
Sardines.
shoulder when you're sweating.
Oh, it was great. I mean, I would look out there every Sunday going, man, these people are crazy. I mean, just,
But it just puts you to want to say that whatever your storm is, what you're going through, whatever's blown through your life,
Yep.
just hang on.
Hang on,
Yeah.
buddy.
Keep going forward. I thought about Moses.
Yep.
And God telling him, so you tell my people that they go
Yep.
forward.
Go forward. Don't look back.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, I think that our slogan is so perfect for who we are, is we literally are built on love.
Oh,
it
it-
started from somebody
we
inviting you.
didn't do that on purpose. That
No.
came about. We didn't make that happen. That church built on love was just it just became a living thing. We didn't. Nobody said, "Hey, let's say this church."
We didn't have no meeting.
Nobody came up with that. It's just like it happened. It was it's so real. It was just a.
When did that
organic.
start? Like, when did that come into play.
I
guess.
really couldn't tell you exactly when.
Jesus built this church on love.
It was a song.
It was a song.
Yeah, it was
I
a
think
song.
Didn't Chad and them sing it
It
first?
was the kids that sang it.
I thought maybe it was Chad Hawks and some of the kids.
It was
when
kids.
Chad was
he was
young.
part of the youth group, I think. But
Yeah.
I think it was kids.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know how that worked.
That's how it came about. And but it was
Ashland picked it up.
but it was because it was
Later.
being said, you know.
And it just you lived it,
And then it became our theme song. And then I had to put it on our first sign, you know.
Yeah.
Jesus built his church on love.
Man, it did. And he did.
Yeah.
You know, and we've seen that so many times, especially through that tragic thing that
Yeah.
the tornado and yeah.
Yep.
But there's, you know, but that's really, I mean, all through the years that whatever thing was going on, whatever heartbreak or tragedy, whatever it was, that's, you know, that Juanita Bynum said that. She said, you know, people that shout who've never been through anything, you know, it still may be real, but when you know it's real, it's when somebody's been through some stuff and had to agonize and fight and hang on for dear life to get through it. When they come through that and you hear them shout, man, you know that's real. That's not just from your mouth. That's from your heart and from deep within you. And I think that's when you really find out. Hey, anybody can say they love you until it gets hard to love you.
Yeah. Yep.
Till it's uncomfortable to love you. Till it ain't popular to love you. And I think that's what this time we're in. No, people love you when it's favorable, when it's beneficial, or when it's popular. You know, and if you're not popular, if you're not the end thing, you know, people would love me because I would visit and do whatever. If I missed a visit, well, he's whatever.
And that's how it goes.
It's kind of, what have you done for me lately?
What is the biggest? We talked about this before, but not on here. What's the biggest change for you in ministry the last 42 years? Have you noticed anything like major, not worldly, just the church in general, I guess?
Well, you know, it's funny because I don't really know that you could say, oh yeah, I've seen this as a big change, big sign of a change or whatever. But of course, people have changed. It's just the world's changed. Things are, you know, busier and people are more occupied. You know, back in the day when we first started, I mean, there was, you know, you just didn't have as much going on. Back in early days, you didn't have, there wasn't even basketball practice on Wednesday nights or Sundays.
That's
and
true.
There were no games for sure, you know, and so, I mean, people made sure that they didn't schedule anything when it was with church day, and so that's all kind of changed, but in some ways things have changed, you know, for the better as far as the church is concerned, because now we can get, you know, with multimedia and the things we have now, the means we have to reach the, you know, people with the gospel and with the good news. It's just that's made it so much better, and I think too, because I believe in the last days, there's also a great outpouring. So there are people,
absolutely,
and there's a real excitement, and I mean not just in the youth here, but in the youth everywhere.
Oh yeah,
There's a real zeal, boy, and that's you mentioned that movie Jesus Revolution. I mean
that's what it was.
that's what it is. So in that way, you know, it's really, so you could sit there and go, oh yeah, you know, it's kind of like comparing the best basketball player in the world. You know, well, what time you talking about? Because the game has changed so much. You know,
That's
so
right.
You can't really say, oh, this guy was the best. Well, he is for this time, but what about if he'd played in this day? And
the era.
Yeah, so if you, I just don't think you really ought to kind of look at church that way. I think it's more about just, hey,
Is my message the same?
yeah.
Yeah.
If I can honestly say, and I believe Robert will testify, that the message really hasn't changed at all.
No, it hadn't.
It's not.
Just a method, right?
I've got a different anointing. I'm in a different place. I've been through different things that's changed and whatever me or what made me. But the truth is, when you get right down to it, it's still the same. It's
The only thing I feel that's changed, though, is like what you keep saying is urgency. The time that is now.
Yeah. There is that, and you can also tell too. There's even in the younger folks, they understand that too.
Yeah.
They feel like, hey, I've got to hurry and get this done.
Yeah, the young adults, I've seen a statistic on this, that young men, the rate of them going to church, young men, going to church has increased like 15 to 20% in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they was talking about how
Yeah.
young fathers are
Yeah.
going to church, and historically we've seen a lot of women being more involved in church.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's pretty awesome in itself.
Thank God for him.
Amen.
Carry through a hard time.
Well, there was a time that well, in fact, it's been told, there was a time there wouldn't have been no church had not been for the women.
No,
Yeah.
Hey, you wouldn't be in
No,
church
no,
today if it
no.
wasn't for Nana.
But just to show you how when God has a plan,
Yeah.
and He has a plan for all of us, and when He has a plan, and you finally figure it out, you finally find your place in it. I still remember, of course, I was backsliding away from God, and I was working with my uncle on that tower job at Hopkins County Courthouse, and that guy wire snapped, and he was 40 feet in the air on the peak of a real tall courthouse.
Yeah.
And when that tower began to fall, and I had a hold of the rope, I just pulled up a section of tower that he was bolting down, and that thing fell. And I watched my uncle fall to his death up there. And I literally couldn't find him. He fell down to the lower level of that building, and I was running trying to find him. When I found him, I saw blood running down the gutter of that building, and I knew he was gone. And I still remember, I was a kid. I was in my early 20s, maybe 19, and I still remember the pastor of Neal's Chapel Church was Brother Glenn Harper, and he come to Mom and Dad's house that night, and we were just grieving, and hurting. And I remember walking outside, and I was out there in fact, it was that old walnut tree there at the house up there, and just heart broke. I mean, just man, and my uncle had only been saved like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
He had gotten baptized at Divines Lake, and his clothes that he changed out of was still in Mom and Dad's trunk, and they were still wet. He had to hurry up and get everything done. Hurry up. I got to join the church. I got to get baptized. He had to hurry up and get all that done. And there I was watching him leave here. Oh. And I still remember that morning because it was a little bit windy up there, and him and Dad was talking. Dad was going to Morganfield, and he helped us get everything up there. And then he took off, and he said something to him about they were talking about climbing that tower, and Coggy said, "Just getting closer to home. The higher I get, the closer I am."
Wow.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and then it wasn't but a few hours later he was home. But standing out there in front in that shade tree out there, and just hurting, boy, because he was one of my best friends,
Right.
Mama's brother, and Brother Harper said, "Danny, I know this is hard. I can't imagine." I said, "It is, and he said, sometimes God uses things like this to get our attention."
Yeah.
I said, "I know, and He's got my attention." I said, "But here's what scares me. I'm scared to death He wants me to preach. that He wants me to pastor Neal's Chapel Church." And I still remember him saying this. He said, "Well, you can have it right now." I said, "I don't want it. That's the problem. I don't want it. I don't want to pastor. I don't want to preach. I don't want anything to do with that." But I was backslid on God. That's all them years ago. So even then,
You knew.
Yeah.
even then,
That's awesome.
and
That's
it was
crazy.
like, and now it's like, where did that come from? I mean, where did that?
You know what he shared with me when I was wrestling with the call?
Yeah.
One thing he told me, and it came to be the absolute truth. He said, "I'm telling you, if you are," he said, "when you know, you'll know that you knew you know as well when in the beginning,
Yeah.
as you do at that moment."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was.
Yeah.
That's what he told me too.
All that makes sense to you.
Yeah. All the
It didn't make
pieces
any
start
sense
coming
then.
together.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense then. But
I remember like when you went that July the 26th, 2015 is when I got surrendered to the call. And I remember that day, and we were sitting down there at that altar, and it's wild because I didn't know that Mom was the reason why you went down. Caleb Reynolds was for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, "God, if this is real, show me a sign." And then Caleb went down to that altar,
Yeah.
and he said, "That was your sign." And I knew it was him because the first time I really started getting on fire for God when I was 13, 14, 15, Caleb Reynolds went down to the altar, and that was the reason, my why.
Yeah.
So that morning, I've been struggling with it. Didn't tell Kara. I just talked to you about it. You was the only person
Yeah.
then. And you were trying to talk me out of it,
Oh, yeah.
and I understood why.
Well, I knew if I could, you didn't really have a
Right.
call.
You knew that I wanted to be sincere.
Yeah.
But I went down to that altar, and after I'd seen it, I knew. And you came down there, and you asked me one question: "Did you see it?"
Yeah.
And I remember saying, "Yeah," and I just seen flashes of myself preaching. and me behind the pulpit, not myself, but just like looking out and just seeing people and in the crowd and talking, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's it. And then I looked up at you and you said you seen it, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I knew too. I mean, I knew this too. There'd be people that would say, "Well, are you just doing this because your papa's a preacher?"
Yeah.
And I knew you would have to deal with that question, and you'd deal with that kind of stuff, And I thought, if you don't have a real assurance, that you know, you know that you know, and really, it's that way about being saved or whatever. You got the old preacher said, "I know that I know that I know that I know that I'm saved." You have to know beyond any doubt, and when you do know, there ain't nobody can talk you out of it.
Yeah, we got so many men of God in our church, ministers.
It is amazing.
That's
to
wild,
be honest
ain't it?
with you. I mean, we've had a lot of people surrender to preach out of this church that have went on to pastor or whatever, but some of them, God sent back here. Robert's one of them. I'll tell you, boy, it's just a blessing that so needed here.
John Shea. He's not answering that one, is he?
Ding dong. Yvonne calling.
But
He's in trouble.
but I believe, I just believe, and not just here, but this is here. This is our field. This is where God's put us. We're all working. But I believe, and we're seeing a harvest.
Oh my God!
But I believe there's a overflow of an honor rush coming.
Yeah.
I believe it's coming, and it's going to take every one of us, and not just those preachers, but the ladies, the everybody that can pray and lead somebody. That's one of the things that's, we have really been working and talking about is discipling people to be soul winners, and not just witnessing, but to know how to lead them in prayer and share Jesus with them in that moment. I believe that's coming. I believe it's
Listen,
soon.
buddy, we've got some of the. I mean, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but I tell you on that altar, man, some of these women praying the Holy Ghost down.
Oh,
boy.
you
I
ain't
mean,
kidding.
You ain't kidding.
I mean, you almost gotta get a hold of something. And say, man, I better up my game a little bit because they're praying me under the table
I'll tell
here.
you what, I stop listening to them sometimes.
Yeah,
Well,
I
you
just
can't
say,
help it. You
I do
can't help
too,
it.
man.
Well, I'm a few times I've stopped and I hope they call my name out directly.
Mention me, please.
It's just
We're blessed.
I
We're
tell you,
very blessed.
It's unreal, and another thing too, we got people coming here that just recently coming here, and you know what this first thing they said was, "Well, I'm glad that I can come somewhere where I don't hear a denomination preached or be this or be that." It's just
Jesus and Him crucified.
it's just crazy. It goes right back to the same message, the same fundamental thing we started with, all them years ago.
Austin paying Austin. Look at his face.
What's going on over there?
AP is real curious.
He's wondering.
It's my tablet.
Robert's struggling.
Well, I don't
Austin
know.
said one rule: turn off your phones.
Well, it's
it
not
ain't
my phone,
me this
it's
time.
my iPad. So.
He was getting on to me because my phone was buzzing last time we did
I
this.
heard it constantly.
He was like, "You didn't have
It's
it
off
off."
now, preacher.
It's off now.
Sorry, I digress.
But
Well,
hey,
listen,
listen.
hey,
Hey.
y'all just ain't as important as Robert is.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Goodness.
Yeah, it's,
You got me back, don't you,
you
preacher?
got. I
yeah.
got
I'm
you.
hoping
I
he
got
was
you.
missing that one.
I got you, brother.
Goodness.
I mean, but
me
it
got
is
you.
awesome that
Mini me
we
over there.
are we're all getting to share this together. This whole thing. This
Yeah,
straighten up over there, McKenna.
that's that's what
Robert,
it is.
you got two of us now. You're in trouble.
That's what is
I've
awesome
dealt with
about
that before, and I'm not going to. I'll run away.
I mean, when people, I had I got a text the other day, and it's really nice. I mean, really sweet. But he said, I'm starting to believe that your family is just anointed by the Holy Ghost. And I thought he's talking about my wife, my kids, my grandkids. I mean, he's just looking at this thing, going, hey, you know what? Look at this. I mean, so you're talking about one of the big changes, I guess, is now. We began and our kids was little kids, and now my kids are grown and they've got kids, and those kids have kids. You know, I'm coming into service now and hugging my great granddaughters when I get to the pulpit. So and I look at some of these kids in our youth group that now have kids and grandkids.
That's wild.
So that's when seriously, it's amazing to see when when God does something, He does it right, and
Oh, yeah.
and it's
You can't replicate it
It's
either.
the real deal.
You can't try to conjure anything up when God's involved.
That's right.
There's no way you've
No.
always taught me that.
Yeah.
There's no way you can make a service or try to do something or say something if you don't allow God to intervene. It's just going to go flat. But if you say, "Here it is, this is yours," that's when He multiplies it and blesses it. And
That's when it's sustainable. You know,
Right.
What we do sometimes, it may look good and work for a while, but it's if it's not really backed by the Spirit of God,
it'll fall flat.
it won't last long.
Don't miss the move.
That's
right.
it.
Don't
Yeah.
miss it. I think that's one. I think we're just in it.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're not missing it. We're gonna miss a moment of it.
And we've seen some of the visions that people have seen throughout the years. We've seen some of those come to pass, but not all of them.
No.
No, we still waiting on a
There's
few.
more. There's more to come. So
North, south,
that's what's
east, and
exciting
west.
too. I mean, really, it is. So
Well, it was the
I mean, we got another baptizing Sunday. We got
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh,
and
cool.
we got. I mean, there's something else that's going to happen Sunday that I'm aware of. That's going to be a blessing, and
Yeah, for sure.
so it's all good.
Yep.
Yeah. It's
love
been
it. Love it. Boy, and I pray that the folks that are listening, that our prayer is. I love that Brother Danny's always told us. Tell that story about the pastor praying for that we're praying for other churches.
Oh yeah, 100%.
We're not thinking we just thank God for what He's doing.
Yeah, we're
And
excited.
we want every church.
Yeah,
I
we're
hope
just-
every church is getting and having
we're just
having
glorifying
this.
God. Yeah.
But you talk about a preacher that was a young preacher went and left from the church and went. God had him go start a church or something, wasn't it?
Well, it was a church that had had a lot of problems, and he was a young preacher, and they had contacted him about pastoring a church, and he went to his pastor and said, "Hey, look, they're talking to me about pastoring this church," and he goes, "Listen, son, you don't want that. It's just they've had a lot of trouble there. You don't want to get in the middle of that. I just don't think it's a wise move for you." And so he said, "Okay," and so he kept praying about it and felt the Lord led him to take it. And so he took the church. And anyway, they'd gotten down to a handful of people, and all of a sudden they began to grow. And next thing you know, it was 50 people and 100 people, then 200 people and 500 people. And it just kept growing. This pastor of his, the elder pastor, come to him and says, "I've got to know, what are you doing? Our church has kind of maintained our same numbers, and we have not grown, and you have just exploded. So what are you doing? I mean, what kind of prayer are you praying? How are you praying for this church for it to grow like that?" He goes, "Oh, listen, Pastor, I'm not praying for my church. I'm praying for yours."
Yeah.
And so his church exploded because he was praying for somebody else's church. And
That's right.
so if you're so caught up in yours, then that's probably why you're stuck.
Oh wow!
And if
that'll stick.
if you'll
That's right.
you'll pray and do for others as he would do for you, then you will look around and you'll be blessed. How many times you went to an altar and prayed for somebody and God blesses you because
Just as
man.
much. Yep.
you didn't even ask for yours, but you asked for theirs.
Yeah.
And so
that was good.
and that's where a lot of preachers get stuck. They get stuck because they get caught up praying for their ministry, and if you're already messing up because it ain't yours.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Yep.
It's His.
It's all Jesus.
yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Well,
This has been so cool.
I started saying
We'll come back.
You're probably gonna
Yeah.
regret asking.
No, we're
Danny.
gonna
No,
we're gonna do a part
amazing.
two for
Yeah,
sure.
we have to have another.
You
Yeah.
asked me to talk about the Lord. I'm telling you, you asking for it. I'm
No,
telling you.
we have to do another
We
one.
definitely
You got
have to.
Yes.
you killed it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm proud to be your grandson.
I
but
don't know. Probably you're gonna have to edit 99% of it.
Well,
no,
those of
just
you don't
Austin
know
scenes.
that this is Brother Danny Greene. This is the
do we
pastor
know?
of Church Street, the church we go to. We never introduced. We just went talking, but that's who that is.
That's him.
That's him in the flesh.
The man.
The man.
That's it. Nothing to kill it with.
All right.
Thank y'all for joining.
Yeah.
Dude, yes. Amen.
Thanks
All
for
right.
having me, guys. This is awesome. What you're doing is awesome. I'm so proud of you and so thankful to God that He's calling you to do this, and so thankful that He's put people to help you. And I don't believe there's any end in sight. God's got great things in store for you. So keep on keeping on, and you have my full support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you,
joining.
Lord.
Thank y'all for watching and listening. God bless.